This is Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram, and with me today is State Senator Mike Shirkey, the Senate Majority Leader. Senator, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Scott. It's been a few weeks since we've talked, and a lot of things have happened since then, not the least of which is we've got another Super Bowl under our belts. That's
right. Tom Brady picks up championship number 7, and people, of course, asking before the game, who you rooting for? Who do you want to win? I mean, I'm an old guy now. I'm over 40, so I'm rooting for the old guy, of course, Tom Brady.
Darn right. You're darn right. Plus, he's got very good Michigan ties.
Yes.
And you have to admire him. He's superhuman. I mean, the guy, he's ageless. He still looks like he's 25 years old, and he plays like I'll say he plays like he's 30 years old. But I think it's a lesson learned that it's not a wise thing to bet against Tom Brady these days. So. And
he says he's not done yet.
I know. He says we'll be back next year. It was a real simple quip that when he was asked, and so away we went. And you and I were talking briefly offline about some of the fantastic ads that occurred, and the one that just resonated with my family, and I know yours, and many of your listeners, is the one that Toyota did with regarding the adoption. That was just wouldn't it be wonderful if our world and our airways and our messaging and our so forth were more ripe with those kinds of messages? Wouldn't that be just a nice change in our culture?
And that one line from the mother, the response after hearing, what her adopted child was going to be like, she said, "Well, it might not be easy, but it's going to be amazing." That was a fantastic line.
It makes me tear up just hearing you say it.
Well, you can find more from Senator Mike Shirkey on his website, of course, senatormikeshirkey.com. Find him on Facebook as well. I know many people have found you over these past 12 months or so, certainly, or almost 12 months at this point. And there's some frustration out there. I know you hear and feel it, frustration among Michigan residents about the restrictions, about the governor acting alone on so many of these matters. And the question that I'm sure you hear and I hear, well, why don't you do more? Why don't you do something about it? What are you doing out there to stop this stuff? And I wanted to give you sort of a chance to respond to that because it's a question that keeps coming up. What can you do? What are you doing on those lines?
It's a very fair question, and it exemplifies the frustration all of us have in this time. The unnecessary shutdowns, the brutal, abusive shutdowns of the restaurant industry and so forth. And I know that it's frustrating because people don't think we're doing anything or they can't see it. The fact of the matter is we've been doing a lot, but it's all within the law. We've sued the governor 5 times. We've won 4 of those 5 suits. We have recently have been pressing her hard on her appointments to get her attention to say, listen, there's more than one branch of government in Michigan. The legislative branch is a co-equal branch, and we've been pressing hard on the other lever, the other tool that the legislature has, and that is budget. This year, we've, as you probably already noticed, we've taken a more aggressive role on the appointments and it's already paid dividends. We've got a new director of the Department of Health and Human Services, and in the last 2 weeks, there has been more interaction between that department, which is the source of the executive orders now, as you know, they're being done under the Public Health Code. We've had more conversation and exchange of ideas and input in the last 2 weeks than we've had in the previous 2 years. And so it can be assigned to a lot of causes, one of which was the most recent Let 'em Play effort by moms and dads across the state that rallied and I think had a great impact on our governor's perspective. She tends to govern by polls, and so I think she's seen, I know she's seen some dramatic changes in her polls, and part of that is driven by the activism, the proper and appropriate and constitutionally provided activism by citizens. This business of self-governance doesn't stop with electing representatives. Sometimes it takes a joint team effort with representatives that are sent to Lansing, plus the activism real citizens like the moms and dads that were involved and let them play. And so I'm sorry that it doesn't look like we're doing a lot. We're doing everything we can do within the law, and I refuse to break the law just to make a point, even though I believe our governor has broken the law and the department a number of times in terms of how egregious some of their shutdowns have been. So I acknowledge and accept the criticism, but I hope people accept the notion that we're not standing still. We're not doing nothing, even though sometimes it looks like it.
Senator Mike Shirkey with us here on Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. You mentioned this, and I wanted to spend a little time. It's perhaps one of the more higher profile maneuvers, certainly over the past month or so, as Republicans in the state Senate have blocked a handful of appointees of Governor Whitmer, around 20 or so, one to the Board of Cosmetology and some trustees on state universities, and essentially an effort to reestablish or at least remind the governor that there are other parties involved in governing the state, or at least there should be when it comes to the legislature. What's your goal with these blocks, and I guess what would be the circumstances in which you would lift those blocks?
This is an excellent question. These were purposeful political gestures. I'm not hiding behind anything else. They were allowed for us through our Constitution, for the legislature to, in particular the Senate, to provide advice and consent, basically final authorization for appointees. And if you notice, these were done in blocks, not individuals. And then nobody should interpret our blocking these appointees as a specific gesture toward any individual. It was a purposeful political gesture to say, hey, Governor, over here, we are part of this legislative process, part of the governance of Michigan, and it's time that we started partnering together. We have scheduled some advice and consent committee meetings specific to individual people. And your question about, what's got to happen in order for us to change our attitude towards something like appointments, and I refuse to give a checklist. I just simply say when the governor starts treating and respecting the legislature as a co-equal branch, involves us in decision-making, communicates with us, shares with us the data and science, which is still absent, behind many of the decisions that were made that have been so abusive to our citizens and our businesses and our citizens. Until that happens, to my satisfaction and to our satisfaction, we're going to continue to exercise the kinds of levers that the Constitution provides. You'll see, we're already involved in reassessing and reassigning some of the federal money that's been sent to Michigan through the budget process. That's another legislative prerogative, and we're going to continue to do that. The good news is that I see a change in a trend that I'm hoping is an indicative of the future. And I've already mentioned one thing to you, and that is the increased communication between the legislature and the Department of Health and Human Services director. They're not necessarily asking for permission, but engaging and sharing and asking for ideas and asking for input and feedback and just what you would expect out of a properly running governance structure. So that's the history behind it. That is the strategy behind it. I admit that those two gestures are purposely political, and I believe they're starting to have the effect intended.
State Senator Mike Shirkey with us here. The student athletes around the state of Michigan are going to be playing again tonight as we record our conversation today. They'll be back at action tonight. This is another thing, a long time coming, something that the Senate pressed the governor on about 2 weeks ago, passed a resolution urging the governor to lift the suspension of high school and youth sports, and that has finally happened. What does this mean for athletics around the state and for student athletes, their well-being around the state?
So last week, the department announced that they would be allowed to, starting today, to engage in competition, inter-competition. Last night, actually, during the first half of the Super Bowl, the department came out with its list of guidelines, and I didn't spend a lot of time last night reading it because I was paying attention to the football game.
Mm-hmm.
But the essence of it is this: is that whatever the association is that guides the specific sport, they'll be responsible for establishing and implementing safety protocols for all the different sports. There's basketball games scheduled for tonight, and thank God I don't have to necessarily drive to the free state of Indiana or the free state of Ohio anymore to watch grandsons play basketball, because they'll be able to play here in Michigan. And so, there are some safety precautions required, similar to what you see on the sidelines of sports teams, where if you're not participating, if you're still to be careful about safety. And you and I can have a long conversation about the necessity for that at a different time. But I think we should just now celebrate the fact that Michigan is finally catching up with what other states have been doing for a long time. And students and parents can, frankly, they can revel in their success, because it was, the legislature is putting some pressure on, but quite frankly, I think it was finally moms and dads saying enough is enough.
Right.
And so, it's a good thing, and you start to see people maybe even seeing a crack of a smile behind that mask now, with a little bit of freedom that's been long overdue.
State Senator Mike Shirkey. Find him online at senatormikeshirkey.com. Also find him on Facebook as well, when you can search for Senator Mike Shirkey and representing the 16th State Senate District, of course. Senator Shirkey, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Scott. You have a great week and day, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.